Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's see if I'm live. It is 12:56 p.m. on a Tuesday, May 1st. May 1st. The other person resigned in the UK, what her name, Rudd or something like that. When is May gonna come? Or when is May gonna go? I forget the joke. I messed the joke up. I'm sorry. There's a joke associated with the UK politics with Theresa May. I missed the joke. Hope everybody's doing okay though. Let me check my sound, make sure my sound is good. Guys, I do shows all the time, so please feel free to click the button at the bottom if you like the content, and please subscribe if you feel that you're digging what I'm putting down. Wesley, by the way, your shirt is on the way. It is signed and it is finished. We finished it yesterday and it is signed. The next person I'm going to announce it probably tomorrow, maybe today or tomorrow. So those are for the patrons. I want to thank you very much, all of you who support the show and help the show out. You guys are amazing help. Thank you very much. So the show I want to talk about today has to do with what I consider extraordinarily problematic. Israel is dragging us to war, and it's not just Israel. The Trump administration is complicit in this, but we're being dragged to war. One of the most aggravating things that I find when I do these videos is the disincentive to do these videos. Like, I swear, man, this is going to be demonetized Tuesday. It's one thing if I'm saying stuff that is so off the reservation where a company says, okay, I don't want to deal with that. But if you're recounting events and you're saying this is what's taking place in the world, you shouldn't be dinged for talking about what's taking place in the world, especially when those events are extreme. I mean, there's some massive shifts that are going on in our political system that we need to be aware of, especially with regards to Israel, its attacks on Syria, which are really attacks on Iranian installations and Iranian influence in that country, potential Iranian responses. And whether they realize it or not, the calculus is not the same. Like, Israel got away with a lot of attacks in Syria and Iran in the past. The calculus is different. Like, I think they believe that because all of the conflict is taking place in Syria, it allows them a heavier hand in that case. The problem is that the Syrian government and the Iranian government, to some degree, have aligned with the Russian government. And the Russian government has made clear that they want stability in that region of the world. What Syria is doing, or what Iran is doing, and what the United States is doing, is the opposite of stability in the world. Let me explain what I mean. So, on Sunday, we woke up to this. This is heartbreaking, to be honest. To me, this one was the most heartbreaking of the two videos, because this is a human being watching something and is clearly distressed by what they're watching. If you notice, the person is they're trying to deal. They're human beings seeing something that's traumatic that they're trying to deal. This has been a war-torn country for God knows how long. But something is intruding into the airspace, and out of the sky drops something that had, I think it's number 2 on the Richter scale. It caused almost like an earthquake, registering like a number 2 on the Richter scale. This is traumatic. And this is some foreign body, some foreign country that gets tired of murdering Palestinians in their open-air ghetto and makes the determination that they want to go into a country with an alignment that's legal. Syria can align with whoever it wants. If it wants to align with Iran, it can align with Iran. If it wants to align with Russia, it can align with Russia. The United States decides to align with the theocratic regime of Saudi Arabia that pushes terrorism throughout the world, and it decides to align with Israel that murders Palestinians, not to mention the open-air ghetto. My issue with this is not singular. This is somewhat of an expansion of what Israel has been doing and what Israel has been pushing. So yesterday, Bibi gave a batshit crazy PowerPoint presentation essentially alleging that Iran still has nuclear weapons, or that they're trying to get nuclear weapons. Right here. But while Netanyahu made much of the incriminating blueprint, incriminating photos, incriminating videos, and more, he supposedly revealed for the first time on Monday, critics argued that the Israeli prime minister's evidence largely consists of old information that has been repackaged for political purposes, but does nothing to undermine the nuclear accord. In fact, according to the National Iranian American Council, President Trita Parsi, the concerns Netanyahu raised about Iran's previous nuclear program were the exact reason why the international community negotiated the agreement to limit the country's nuclear capacities in the first place. Understand what she's saying? He's giving old information. And she's saying, look, the stuff that you're talking about is the very reason why they decided to do the deal. You're not giving any new information. Netanyahu revealed nothing that indicates Iran is not upholding its obligations under the nuclear deal, Parsi said in a statement that following the Israeli's prime minister's speech. Netanyahu's desperation to kill the Iran deal and drag the United States into war with Iran was on full display today. Netanyahu played a key role in helping con the American people into a war with Iraq, and now pulling out all the stops to do the same with Iran. Responding to Netanyahu's performance on the Monday, Federico Ogini, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Secretary of Security Policy, said the Prime Minister's speech has not put into question Iran's compliance with the nuclear deal. Essentially, nothing Bibi said has changed our disposition on anything. He said nothing new. Medea Benjamin, co-founder of the anti-war group Code Pink, argued in a series of tweets on Monday that Netanyahu's remarks were an effort to both distract from Israelis' killing and terrible siege of Gaza and to undermine the agreement on international analysts say has been very effective. The United States and Saudi Arabia are setting the scene for war. They're filling in the justification to fit a preordained conclusion just like before the invasion of Iraq, Benjamin told Common Dreams in an email. Trump has Pompeo and Bolton ready to sell war. The war is a great distraction from domestic troubles. While Netanyahu's speech did little to convince experts and independent commentators that Iran's failing to live up to the commitments under the nuclear deal, the presentation certainly reached its intended audience. During a news conference with the president of Nigeria on Monday, Trump declared that Netanyahu's performance demonstrates that he has been 100% right in his criticism of the nuclear accord. The deadline for Trump to rectify the agreement is May 12th, and many believe the president will decide to withdraw from the deal. In recent weeks, both Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and Foreign Minister Javad Zarif have reminded the international community that the country has no desire, no plans to build a nuclear weapon. With or without the deal, Iran does not seek to acquire weapons of mass destruction, Rouhani said in a television speech last week. It gets worse, because it's not just Common Dreams. This is NBC News saying the same thing. And I got to be honest, it doesn't take the leak of logic to get to this point. He surrounded himself with Bolton. He's surrounded himself with Pompeo. He's been critical of the Iran deal, and he's surrounded himself with a bunch of hawks on Iran. He's listened to Bibi spout this ridiculousness that Iran is still trying to get a nuclear weapon, when all of the other European agencies have said that's nonsense and have said that Iran has lived up to the accord. And Donald Trump says, I like what that guy is selling. This Karn artist that's been here before, I like what this guy is selling. This is NBC News. Israel seems to be preparing for a war with Iran, U.S. officials say. You don't say. An Israeli airstrike that killed and wounded dozens of Iranians at a Syrian base is the latest in a sign of escalating conflict. Now, the point that they're making is Israel doesn't like the impact of Iranians in Syria. Now, this is amazing. This is like saying Russia doesn't like the impact of Saudi Arabia in the United States. Sad day. Countries can align with whoever countries want to align with. They feel self-justifyingly that they can attack Iran anytime they want, or attack Syria anytime they want if they feel that Iran is in that country. Mind you, Iran is in that country legally. Israel is not. They're leaving their open-air ghetto in order to commit other illegal acts in another country under this justification of, well, we don't like Iran in that country, and so we're not going to tolerate it, so we're going to attack that country. That's an amazing thing, but that's essentially what they're saying. Mind you, again, they're lying legally. Israel is not. On Monday, Defense Secretary, right here, 3 U.S. officials said Israel now seems to be preparing for military action and is seeking U.S. help and support. What, the billions of dollars that you get, the nuclear weapons, the hand holding, the sucking on the tit of America isn't enough? You need more support in this? I mean, fuck, man. On Monday, Defense Secretary James Mattis said that he and Israel Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman spoke at some length about Iran's presence and actions in Syria during a meeting at the Pentagon last week. He said Israelis are concerned that Iran and its proxy forces may attack. The Iranian forces, or the proxy forces, have tried to get down closer to the Israeli border. I mean, very close to it. And you've seen Israel take action over that, Mattis said. Israeli military acknowledges has struck in Syria more than 100 times since 2012 with weapons convoys intended for the Lebanese militant groups Hezbollah. 3 weeks ago, Israel conducted a series of pre-dawn strikes on Syrian bases of Homs province, according to 2 U.S. officials. Israeli jets targeted, let's call it T military base, also known as T4 Air Base, which houses Iranian drones and personnel. While Israel did not ask for United States approval for more action, some cautionary notes were sent. According to officials, Israel now has returned to a campaign of targeted strikes. During the past week, senior military leaders, Israeli military leaders, have meetings with senior U.S. counterparts, both in the region and the United States, looking for the U.S. support for stronger action against Iran and Syria. U.S. officials say Israeli requests include intelligence support. Now, Iranians killed in suspected military strike. Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, said Monday that the United States was trying to push Saudi Arabia to war with Iran. Americans are trying to provoke Saudi Arabia against Tehran, he said. Their aim is to create more regional crisis. His comments came after Mike Pompeo, the new U.S. Secretary of State, visited Saudi Arabia and Israel, promising to take a hard line against Iran during both stops. The problem is their calculus is somewhat off. The United States is not a unipolar power, and this is not a situation with Iraq, where Iraq was isolated, if that makes sense. It's one thing if you're attacking a country and you're unipolar power and Iraq is isolated. You can destroy that country in that way because nobody else is intervening in that country. This is not the situation to which we find ourselves. Syria is not an isolated country, nor is Iran an isolated country, and Russia has insisted that it wants stability in the region. Netanyahu had a conversation with Vladimir Putin. They essentially warn each other about Iran. Listen to that. I mean, like, understand, they're essentially talking past each other. Putin is saying, we want stability in the region and we want you to respect the territorial borders of these countries. And Netanyahu is saying, we're not going to tolerate Iran in Syria, even though it's there on his own volition, Syria's volition. Vladimir Putin stressed the fundamental importance of respecting the sovereignty of Syria and called for refraining from any actions that might further destabilize the situation in the country and pose a threat to its security, the Kremlin said. The readout from Netanyahu's office of the same phone call said Israel would not tolerate long-term Iranian presence in Syria. The prime minister reiterated that Israel would not allow Iran to establish military presence in Syria. The statement said without noting who initiated the call. I'm making the point that the dominoes are lining up in a way that seems like Israel, either with the backing of the United States or without, is looking to start a war with Iran, and that's exactly what it will be doing. It will be the aggressor in starting that war with Iran. If Israel starts that war with Iran by striking military targets in Syria, if they hit military targets in Syria that are Russians, will the Russians respond to their targets being hit? I think that answer is yes. Vladimir Putin said openly, yes, if you attack us, we will respond. I don't necessarily know why they wouldn't respond to Israeli forces if they're killing Russians. If Russia responds and kills Israeli air, shoots down Israeli jets or destroys Israelis, whatever, will the United States get further involved in that conflict? Let's say that's not the way it takes place. Let's say Trump himself wants to get involved further in the conflict with regards to destabilizing Iran. Would Trump use Israel as an attack dog to do those things with this idea that Israel can get away with something that the United States can't, seeing as Russia has said we're not going to tolerate certain actions by the United States in this country? Whatever way you arrange this, come on, this looks bad. Like, this looks extraordinarily bad. Like, there's certain ways that you can arrange the pieces on this where this ends up in a much larger conflict. Say for the moment that Israel attacks Iranian forces, those Iranian forces respond, take down several Israeli airplanes or Israeli jets. Let's say Israel responds deeper, which regards this kind of further attack between the two. Does the United States get involved, seeing as the United States already wants to get involved? This looks bad. I have a hard time believing that Russia is going to tolerate the United States' presence in that region of the world, meaning destabilizing that region further with more attacks. I guess my feeling on this, I listened to Wilkerson, the one who used to work for Colin Powell. I understand what he's saying. This idea of influence in a region, and Israel doesn't necessarily want Iran to have a certain amount of influence and all this other stuff. This seems like nonsense to me. Not nonsense from what he's saying, nonsense from Israel's standpoint. Israel has been doing the striking. I mean, Israel is forever this entity that, oh, why are you hitting me? Why are you hitting me? While at the same token hitting other people. They don't want us to be a state, while at the exact same token trying to prevent Palestine from being a state. And in this case, we don't want Iran to attack us, while at the same token continuously attacking Iran. I mean, this seems nonsense. Your position on this is nonsense. They're going to lead us into a larger war. They're going to lead us into a larger conflict. And we need to be very wary of what Israel is doing right now. The Bibi Netanyahu speech was batshit crazy. And the fact that Bibi Netanyahu is making this claim that these guys still have weapons of mass destruction, and that Donald Trump is taking on this thing of weapons of mass destruction. By the way, before I end this, my main point in this, I don't want to lose the main point. They're leading us into a larger conflict and then potentially a war. And we need to be very aware of what we're doing. Anytime you hear Netanyahu speak, always remember that this was the guy who was selling the Iraq war as being this awesome fucking thing.
Enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age, something new is happening. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone.
You're wrong. You're completely wrong. You're flat out wrong. Empirically, completely wrong. In fact, when you want to look at the Israelis or the Iraqis who are on the ground after what you thought was going to be this awesome fucking day for the Iraq, with the United States smashing that country to bits and murdering 1 million people in that country, when those strikes took place with the United States hitting Iraq, guess what they said? No. Iraqi protests U.S.-led airstrikes against Syria. Why do you think they did that? They did that because they were at the bottom end of the boot of the United States once before. And they understand that the United States smashed that country to bits. And however bad Saddam Hussein was, having 1 million of them murdered and having the United States have all these death squads going through the country murdering people was not something that they wanted. They're seeing the same thing happen in Syria, and they're saying, no, you're flat out wrong. We spent trillions of dollars on that goddamn war. We weren't liberators, we weren't anything. We went into that thing as a war of aggression and conquerors. The people who are the result of that are telling you that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And once again, this maniac who's running this criminal regime, this terroristic regime that has an open-air ghetto in Israel, is now trying to get the same thing to take place with Iran. He's a fucking clown. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It is up to us to say no to this. It is up to us to say no. So, let's see who's here. The War on Terror was created in 1979, and it's Israel. During the conference, Israel, the United States decided to use terrorists as proxies to wage wars against Arabians and Persians. Persians. Afghanistan was a guinea pig. I don't know if it goes back as 1979, but you're right that they've been using proxies, meaning they've been using these kind of like terror squads and death squads going through countries saying that there's some kind of civil strife. I mean, think about what took place in Iran when they used that to topple that government. They're complaining about Iran now, completely missing the fact that it was the CIA in Britain that undermined that government in order to put in this kind of dictator, this autocrat into that country. Bibi's up there talking about the age of dictators is over. It was your ally that put in a dictator. Now, yes, the people of Iran got rid of him and a religious maniac took over. But all of that was because of what the United States was doing in that country. They were dicking around in a country that was somewhat of a secular, thriving government. Same thing with Iraq, meaning they backed this Saddam. And again, they turn around saying these dictators. They forget the fact that we backed these guys. I mean, at one point, there was a coup in Iraq. In that coup in Iraq, the person who took over, I can't think of his name. I can see his face, I can't think of his name. Essentially had this more egalitarian government. The United States did not like that because they didn't necessarily know what was going to happen with the oil. They had an emergency meeting, and the United States, in regards to Western powers, in this emergency meeting was like, oh my God, we need to get our hands back on that oil. What are we going to do with that oil? We need to put somebody in that regime who's going to be more in line with us, at the very least allow us to get our hands on those resources. And that's exactly what they did. They backed the Ba'ath Party. That party, essentially, being at some point run by or taken over by Saddam. But that was the guy that they backed. The monster that George Bush was talking about was the monster that at one point we backed. They don't give two shits about the people in Iran or Iraq. They have their ideas on what they want the world to look like. That nutcase was wrong. And not just wrong, the formation of ISIS in many respects is a result of the United States smashing that country to bits. Does that look like a more stable and peaceful Middle East, Bibi? Doesn't look like it at all. It's like, hey, we need to take time from murdering peaceful Palestinian protesters to try to get a war started in Iran. That's what we need to do. It's amazing. Israel is a U.S. attack dog in the Middle East. So Wilkerson kind of made this point that he thinks this is Israel policy. I don't think this is fully Israeli policy. I think Israel is the attack dog in the Middle East. Meaning all of those guys are hardliners in the Trump administration against Israel. I have a hard time believing that all of this stuff is taking place without the knowledge of the United States. It sounds like they have full knowledge of what is about to take place. They know the nuclear deal or that Iran deal is probably going to fold at some point, or Trump is going to get rid of it. And these guys are looking for a way to go after Iran. They're putting the pieces in place with Donald Trump being, yes, I like this. I like this. I like that you're attacking Iran. I like this. This is not the same game that it was before. Iran is not Iraq. And not just Iran is not Iraq. You have this situation where Iran has a connection to Russia. This is brinksmanship. That's the only point I'm making. This is brinksmanship at a level that is breathtaking. And the person who you have at the helm is Donald Trump and another religious maniac, Bibi Netanyahu. So, and I call him a religious maniac because they're trying to make Israel a Jewish state. It's not a Jewish state. It's no such thing as a religious state. They're just states. It's like, come on. Look at the chaos to promote slumping Israeli arms sales. Looks like chaos to promote slumping Israeli arms sales. It's not just Israeli arms sales. The United States sells weapons in that way too. This kind of financial incentive on selling weapons and chaos and death and destruction. It's amazing. Israel has a perfect out. They're like the annoying little brother who fucks with everyone. Then mom walks in and starts crying and pointing fingers. That's exactly. I had a conversation with an Israeli when I was in Nepal, and I told him, I said, "Look, I don't want my country in line with your political interests. If you're so big and bad, you have nuclear weapons and everything else, handle your own affairs. Why is the United States involved in this conflict? Handle your own affairs. Leave us out of it. You get billions of dollars from us. You have nuclear weapons." And they're always crying about somebody attacking them. Oh, we're being attacked. We're being attacked. While at the exact same token, continuously attacking other countries. Not to mention murdering the civilians. I mean, come on. Let's be honest about what we're talking about. The United States has allied itself with a theocratic regime that sends out terrorists throughout that region of the world, and another regime that is an open-air ghetto and is an apartheid state. These are our allies in the region. that needs to tell us something about ourselves. Meaning we need to look ourselves in the mirror and ask, why are we allied with these countries in this way? Either way, our allies are going to get us into some major trouble, because Iran is probably right. It's not Saudi Arabia that's pushing the United States into this, or the United States pushing Saudi Arabia, let's say it that way. That's probably more so correct. They probably are pushing Saudi Arabia into this, but it's probably Saudi Arabia probably wants to do it anyway. When John Kerry gave that speech saying that the forces in that area of the world, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, wanted to take down Syria, and saying that they were willing to pay the United States for it, that gets you across this idea of the inner workings of geopolitical politics. They're trying to use us as hitmen to take down another country. It's fucking gross. And you have to ask the question on whether or not the American public wants their military to be used in this way. Does the United States want another war? We've been at war for 18 years in one country after the next, using this fig leaf about military action in Iraq. They're trying to take you into Iran. They haven't even gotten you out of Syria, and they're trying to take you into Iran on the pretext, again, of a lie. Let's look at Bibi Netanyahu again, give his prophetic speech of ridiculousness and pure dum-dum.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
And this is the guy that Donald Trump is listening to. If you take out Saddam Hussein, it would have positive reverberations throughout the region. You are wrong. You are magnificently wrong. Killed 1 million people in that war. You were fundamentally wrong. And you're wrong again. And one stupid idiot, Donald Trump, is listening to this idiot talking about Iran. He had a hard on for Iran anyway. I understand all these Trump supporters believe Trump is fighting the globalists. Trump is not fighting anybody. Trump is not fighting anybody. Trump is a useful idiot that's in that office and knows dick about politics. He's a reality show host. He's not fighting anybody. Talking about taking alligators out the swamp. He's putting alligators in the swamp. How much of the failure that is taking place during this administration all across the board in regards to the things that he said he was going to accomplish, how much of that failure do you still give this guy credit for? He is trying to start a larger conflict now with Iran. I don't know how that fits into fighting the globalist model of things. So, all right, I'm not going to keep this one too long because I have a few of these that I want to get to. Norman Finkelstein, anti-Zionist political analyst, will call Netanyahu a terrorist. I actually like Norman Finkelstein. He is ferocious, man. Yeah, he's ferocious. Spartan Guard 18. Israel meddling is way worse than anything Russia ever did as far as meddling goes, if they ever meddled at all. Yeah, I agree with you. They have such an influence in our politics, and our military policy. I don't care if Israel exists or not. I don't care if any particular country exists or not, if I'm being honest. No country has a fundamental right to exist. No country has a right to anything per se. I don't necessarily want Israelis killed and wiped off the map, so don't misunderstand me. But I'm saying this idea that we have a fundamental right to exist, and so much so that we can murder and maim and kill and create horrors around the world in order to protect that right, is nonsense. Imagine the cop that's so terrified that if anything says boo in the night, they shoot. How that person's fear quotient cannot be the standard by which everything else is judged. Meaning, murdering Palestinians because, you know, these guys get the order to shoot protesters cannot be tolerated. If there is any legitimacy to the International Criminal Court, these guys should be prosecuted for that. But they won't be. And now in this case, they're literally breaking international law in order to be the attack dog of the United States. And let's be honest, they themselves wanted to do this. So they don't necessarily have to be the attack dog in this. Both of these guys are in alignment. This is problematic. If they take down the nuclear deal, these guys are going to use that as somewhat of a pretext to attack Iran. What does the rest of the world do when Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia, as a force unto themselves, decide to have a war of aggression again? Does the world community have any stones about this, or do they allow this to take place? I'm going to go and decide that the world community is not going to have any stones on this, and that they are going to allow this to take place. So, all right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.